The rain had stopped just before dawn, the kind of stillness that made the world feel like it was holding its breath. Daniel sat at the edge of his bed, rubbing his eyes, half awake, half dreaming. The house was too quiet. His daughter, Lily, usually made little sounds in her sleep, a hum, a shuffle, the faint sigh of dreams. But that morning, there was only silence. He got up, checked her room, and found her sitting upright on her bed, her small hands clutching something against her chest. "Lily," he whispered. She looked up, those sleepy blue eyes reflecting something far older than her 6 years. "Daddy," she said softly. "Don't forget her." Daniel froze. "Who, sweetheart?" he asked, walking closer, the wooden floor creaking under his feet. Lily unfolded her hands, revealing a small, worn photograph, edges torn, colors faded. It was a picture of a woman Daniel hadn't seen in years. His wife, Lily's mother. Daniel felt his throat close up. He had hidden every picture of her after the accident, not out of hate, but out of pain. He couldn't bear the reminder. He told himself Lily was too young to remember her mother. But now, here she was, holding that old photo like a secret she had been keeping safe all along. "Where did you get this?" he whispered. Lily tilted her head. "She gave it to me, Daddy." Daniel blinked, his heart pounding. Who?" Lily pointed toward the window, where the curtains swayed lightly in the early breeze. "She came last night," Lily said, her voice innocent and certain. "She said you forgot her." She was crying. Daniel's hands trembled as he took the photo. It was the same one he'd thrown away years ago, or thought he had. The edges were damp, almost as if someone had held it in the rain. He looked back at Lily, now lying down, her eyes already fluttering closed again. "Go back to sleep, sweetheart," he said softly, but his voice cracked halfway through the sentence. He sat there for a long time, staring at that photograph in the half-light, the woman smiling gently at the camera, her hand resting on her pregnant belly. The woman he swore he'd never see again. The morning light slid gently through the curtains, spilling across the small kitchen table where Daniel had left the photograph. He hadn't slept a single minute. Every hour, he tried to tell himself the same lie. It's just a coincidence, a dream, a trick of memory. Maybe Lily had found the photo tucked somewhere in an old box. Maybe, but even that didn't explain the handwriting on the back. He turned it over again now, studying the faint ink. "For when you forget, love doesn't stop, it just changes form." The words hit him like a whisper he'd heard before, but couldn't quite place. They felt familiar, almost like Mara's handwriting, yet something slightly off. A softer loop in the letters. The kind of writing you'd find in a note meant for comfort, not closure. Daniel rubbed his temples, his eyes stinging from fatigue. The kettle clicked behind him, breaking the silence. He poured coffee into a chipped mug and sat down again, staring at the photo as if it would give him answers if he just looked long enough. The woman in the picture, Mara, had been radiant that day. He remembered exactly where it was taken, their old apartment's balcony, sunlight flooding through, her hair tied in a loose braid. She had been pregnant then, just a few weeks away from giving birth to Lily. She had her hand resting gently on her stomach, smiling that quiet, knowing smile she always had when she felt Lily kick. Daniel closed his eyes. He could almost hear her voice again. "You'll be a great dad, Danny. Even if I'm not around, she'll have you. That's enough." He had laughed then, brushing it off, calling her dramatic. And yet, those words had come true. When Lily woke up, it was almost 8. The soft patter of her feet on the floor broke him out of the haze. She appeared in the doorway, hair tangled, clutching her teddy bear. "Morning, Daddy," she said in that sleepy voice that always softened him. He smiled, a tired, heavy smile, and poured her cereal. "Morning, sweetheart. Did you sleep okay?" Lily nodded, climbing onto her chair and swinging her legs. "Uh-huh." Daniel hesitated. The photo lay beside the sugar jar. He picked it up, pretending to adjust it, but his voice trembled. "Do you remember what you said last night?" She looked up from her cereal spoon. "About Mommy." The word struck like a quiet thunderclap in his chest. He hadn't heard her say mommy in years. Not since she was a toddler and had stopped asking why all the other kids had two parents at school events. Yeah, he managed, his throat tight. About mommy. Lily's gaze softened. She looked sad. Daniel blinked. She looked sad. Lily nodded. She said you don't talk to her anymore. She said she misses when you used to. Daniel tried to steady his breathing. Lily, he said carefully, mommy can't. I know, Lily interrupted. She's in heaven. She said it as casually as if she were naming a place she'd just visited. But she comes sometimes. Only when you're sad. He stared at her. Her tone was so innocent, so certain, and that made it wise. Sweetheart, he said softly, reaching across the table. You didn't dream it. Lily shook her head. Nope. She stood by the window. She had her white dress on. She smiled at me. And she gave me this. She pointed at the photo. Daniel felt his heart hammer. Mara had a white dress, the one from their anniversary dinner. He'd seen it only once since she passed, folded neatly in the bottom drawer with her perfume still faintly clinging to it. He didn't remember ever showing Lily that dress. That afternoon, after dropping Lily off at school, Daniel stayed parked in his car. Rain clouds were building again, soft gray shadows rolling across the windshield. The photo lay on the passenger seat, its edges slightly damp from the night before. He turned it over, reading the words again. Love doesn't stop, it just changes form. Mara used to say that when she comforted others, she believed love never really ended. It just changed shape. But this handwriting, who wrote it? Daniel rubbed his jaw. He remembered the night of the accident too vividly. The late shift, the phone call, the way his world folded in on itself. He'd spent weeks unable to look at her things, months avoiding every reminder. He'd thrown out that photo himself. He remembered the motion, the guilt, the slam of the trash lid. So how was it here now? By the time school ended, Daniel still hadn't found the courage to tell anyone. He picked up Lily, watching her skip toward the car with her backpack bouncing. She climbed in, singing softly to herself. Her voice, sweet, off-key, filled the silence he'd been drowning in all day. At a red light, she looked up at him. Daddy. Yeah, honey. Mommy said she's proud of you. Daniel's grip tightened on the steering wheel. She said that. Lily nodded, completely serious. She said you're doing your best, even when you think you're not. Daniel's chest constricted, his breath catching. She said that, he whispered again. But Lily had already turned her attention to the raindrops sliding down the window. That evening, as the rain started again, Daniel stood by Lily's door. She was drawing something on a piece of paper, her tongue poking out in concentration. What are you making? He asked. It's a picture, she said proudly, turning it toward him. He froze. It was a drawing of the three of them, Lily in the middle, Daniel holding her hand on one side, and Mara on the other. She'd drawn a mother in a long white dress, with light around her. Did Mommy tell you to draw this? Daniel asked softly. Lily shrugged. She said she misses when we used to sit together. She said you could talk to her again if you want. He knelt beside her, swallowing hard. Talk? How, baby? Before bedtime, Lily said matter-of-factly. Like prayers. She listens better than God. Daniel's eyes welled up. He tried to smile, brushing her hair from her forehead. You're something else, you know that. She giggled. That's what Mommy says too. That night, after Lily was asleep, Daniel found himself sitting by her window, the photo resting in his hand again. The moonlight poured across the floor in pale ribbons. He stared outside. The rain had stopped, and the world felt washed clean. For the first time, he whispered into the quiet, his voice barely above breath. Mara, I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm sorry. He closed his eyes. I didn't forget you. I just didn't know how to keep going. Every photo, every memory, it hurt too much. I thought if I hid it all, it would stop the pain. A soft breeze moved through the curtains. It carried something faint, a scent he hadn't smelled in years. Jasmine. Her perfume. His voice broke. I was wrong. I didn't protect her by forgetting you. I just made her think you were gone from our hearts too. He pressed the photo to his chest, his tears falling silently. "Thank you for sending her the picture," he whispered. "I'll talk to you. I promise." A moment later, a soft thud made him look up. The drawing Lily had made had fallen from her desk. He picked it up carefully. In the corner, written in a child's messy scrawl, was something new. "I told him, Mommy." He remembers now. Daniel stared, his heart hammering, his breath trembling. He looked toward Lily, still asleep, her hands folded beneath her cheek. And for the first time in years, he smiled through his tears. The house had gone silent again. Only the ticking of the clock filled the night. Slow, steady, heavy. Daniel sat in the living room, elbows on his knees, staring at the folded photo on the coffee table. He hadn't been able to move it since Lily handed it to him. Her handwriting, those crooked little letters, still floated in his mind. "Don't forget her, Daddy." He rubbed his face with both hands, his heart aching from exhaustion that wasn't physical anymore. It was deeper, the kind that sits behind the ribs, quiet and endless. He didn't understand how Lily even knew to say those words. He never talked about her mother, never showed her pictures. He thought he was protecting her, but maybe he was just running. The photo caught the light of the lamp, two people frozen in time. A young woman, smiling softly, her head leaning against his shoulder. Her eyes were full of something Daniel hadn't felt in years. Peace. He could almost smell that day again. The lavender perfume she wore, the rain on her hair, the warmth of her fingers when she slipped her hand into his. She used to whisper, "Promise me you'll laugh again if I can't." He had promised, and broken it. A small sound came from down the hallway. Tiny footsteps. Then a voice, sleepy and soft. "Daddy." Lily stood there, holding her stuffed bunny by one ear, her pajamas wrinkled, hair a messy halo around her head. Her eyes blinked slowly in the dim light. "I had that dream again." Daniel straightened, his heart tightening. "Come here, sweetheart." She walked toward him, rubbing her eyes. It was Mommy again. She was sitting by the window, singing that song. "What song, Lily?" "The one that goes," she hummed, off-key, barely a whisper. Daniel froze. It was the same melody his wife used to sing to Lily as a baby, back when she was barely old enough to remember. "How do you know that song?" he asked quietly. Lily shrugged, eyes wide and certain. "Mommy sang it tonight. She told me to tell you she misses you." For a moment, the room went still. Daniel looked at her, her small face, her sleepy innocence, and he felt the sting of tears rising again. He pulled her gently into his lap. "Do you miss it too?" she asked. He nodded, his voice breaking. "Every day, baby. Every single day." Lily laid her head against his chest, listening to the slow beat of his heart. She said not to be sad. She said she's with us, even when you can't see her. Daniel tried to smile through the ache. "She really said that?" "MHM." Lily nodded with sleepy certainty. "She said she's the reason the sun wakes me up every morning." And just like that, something inside him cracked open. He had spent years building walls around that pain, convincing himself he was fine, that time had healed. But now, holding his daughter, hearing her say those words, he realized the love hadn't gone anywhere. It was still hey, just quieter, softer, living in Lily's laugh, in the song she hummed, in the way she looked at the sky before bed. He kissed the top of her head and whispered, "Okay, sweetheart, let's go back to bed." She nodded sleepily. "Can you sing the song, Daddy?" Daniel hesitated. He hadn't sung it in years. But when she looked up at him with those same eyes her mother once had, he couldn't say no. His voice was rough, quiet, almost trembling, but he sang. The melody filled the dark, fragile and imperfect, carrying memories that still hurt too much to touch. Lily smiled as her eyes fluttered closed, her breathing slowing against his chest. He watched her fall asleep, peaceful, unbothered, the way only a child could be when they believe the world still holds magic. Hours later, Daniel found himself standing by the window, unable to sleep. The moonlight spilled across the floor, touching the photo that still lay open on the table. He picked it up again, traced the outline of her face with his thumb. "I wish you could see her," he whispered. She's growing so fast. She has your stubborn smile. The words left his mouth before he could stop them, like a prayer spoken to the quiet. He felt ridiculous talking to someone who wasn't there. Yet, somehow, he knew she heard. And then, a small thing happened. A faint breeze brushed past the curtain, though the windows were closed. The photo slipped from his hand and fluttered to the ground, landing face up, right next to Lily's tiny shoes. For a heartbeat, Daniel just stood there, frozen. He knelt down to pick it up, but something else caught his eye. Under the corner of the frame was a folded piece of paper, something he didn't remember placing there. It was an old note, written years ago. His wife's handwriting, flowing, careful, gentle. He opened it with trembling fingers. If you ever feel lost, hold her hand. She'll lead you back to me. The world blurred. His chest tightened as tears fell, heavy, soundless. He pressed the note against his lips, as though it could somehow bridge the years between them. From the bedroom, Lily murmured in her sleep, "Don't forget her, Daddy." Her small voice floated through the quiet, pure and dreamlike. He turned to look at her, the way the moonlight touched her cheeks, how her hand reached out from the blanket, open as if waiting for someone to take it. He walked over, knelt beside her bed, and gently took that little hand into his. "Never again," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'll never forget her." Outside, dawn began to bloom, a pale golden light creeping through the window. The world looked softer, calmer. For the first time in a long time, Daniel didn't feel alone. Maybe love doesn't disappear, he thought. Maybe it just changes shape, from a person to a memory, from a song to a small hand reaching in the dark. He tucked the photo beside Lily's bed, smiled faintly, and whispered to the morning air, "Thank you for finding a way back to us." The next morning was brighter than usual. The sky wore that soft, faded gold of early spring, the kind of light that makes everything look cleaner, newer. Daniel stood at the kitchen sink, coffee steaming in his hands, staring out the window. The world outside seemed still, as if holding its breath. Lily sat at the table, legs swinging, drawing quietly with her colored pencils. Her hair caught the light, the same golden strands her mother once had. Every now and then, she hummed that little song again, off-key and sweet. It filled the house like sunlight slipping through curtains. Daniel smiled faintly. He hadn't heard humming in this house for years. On the windowsill, the photo rested in its frame again. Her face, his face, and the silent promise between them. Beside it, the folded note remained, its edges worn from the night before. "If you ever feel lost, hold her hand. She'll lead you back to me." He read it again, and somehow, it didn't hurt quite as sharply anymore. Lily looked up from her drawing. "Daddy." "Yes, baby. Can we go outside today?" He hesitated. He hadn't really gone out to the garden since then. The backyard still held the ghost of that last spring, when his wife planted daisies under the maple tree, laughing as the wind tangled her hair. He'd promised to help her finish that garden. He never did. But now, looking at Lily's hopeful eyes, he felt something shift inside him. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I think we can." The garden was overgrown. Tall grass brushed against Lily's knees as she skipped ahead, her shoes wet with morning dew. Daniel followed, slower, his heart caught somewhere between the past and the present. The old wooden bench still stood beneath the maple tree, a little faded, a little crooked. She used to sit there with her tea, humming softly, that same melody Lily somehow remembered. Daniel touched the worn wood. "You still remember this spot?" he whispered under his breath. "Daddy, look." Lily crouched down near a patch of earth, holding up something tiny. A single daisy, small but alive, pushing its way through the weeds. "Mommy's flower," she said proudly. Daniel knelt beside her, running a hand over the petals. "Yeah," he murmured. "It's still hay." Lily looked up. "Can we plant more?" The question struck him like sunlight breaking through clouds. He nodded slowly. "Let's do it." For the next hour, they worked side by side. Daniel dug through the soil, pulling weeds, loosening roots, feeling the dirt under his nails for the first time in years. Lily giggled every time she dropped a seed too early or got mud on her nose. They planted daisies, lavender, and small white roses, her mother's favorites. Every handful of earth felt like something sacred, like stitching pieces of her life back together. Lily talked the whole time about her school, her dreams, how she wanted to be a painter, and how Mommy probably had the best garden in heaven. Daniel smiled at that. Yeah, he whispered. She definitely does. When they finally finished, the garden didn't look perfect. Uneven rows, some flowers too close together, but it felt alive. The breeze carried the faintest scent of lavender again. For a moment, Daniel closed his eyes and almost felt her there beside him. Quiet, proud, smiling. Later that afternoon, they sat on the old bench with sandwiches and lemonade. Lily leaned against him, munching happily, her fingers sticky with jam. Daniel watched her, how easily she smiled, how effortlessly she filled the silence. He realized that this quiet, messy, real life was exactly what his wife had wanted for them. Not endless mourning, not guilt, just living. Lily suddenly turned toward him. Daddy. Yeah. Mommy said in my dream that you have to smile more. Daniel laughed softly, startled. Oh, she did? Huh. Lily said seriously, pointing a tiny finger at him. And she said when you smile, she can see it. He chuckled through the sting in his chest. Then I better smile big. Huh. Lily nodded. The biggest. He grinned wide, exaggeratedly, making her giggle until she dropped her sandwich. For the first time in a long time, laughter filled the air, real and warm. Even the birds seemed to join in, their chirps weaving into the sound of her giggles. As the sun began to dip, painting the sky in amber and lilac, Daniel stood by the garden once more. The flowers swayed in the breeze, soft, fragile, alive. He could feel her presence everywhere now, not as pain, but as peace. He picked one daisy and handed it to Lily. Want to help me with something? She nodded eagerly. Together, they placed the daisy on the bench, right where her mother used to sit. Daniel whispered, We didn't forget you. Lily echoed softly, We remember, Mommy. The wind picked up, gentle and cool, brushing through their hair. The petals of the daisy trembled, as if the world itself was listening. That night, after tucking Lily into bed, Daniel stood at the doorway, watching her sleep. Her tiny hand was curled around her stuffed bunny, her lips parted in a small smile. He turned off the light, whispering, Good night, my brave little light. Downstairs, he made himself a cup of tea, her tea, chamomile, and honey, and stepped out to the porch. The moonlight spilled across the garden, washing everything in silver. He sat on the bench again, the one under the maple, and looked up at the stars. It didn't feel like loss anymore. It felt like love that had simply changed shape, from a woman's laughter to a little girl's voice, from a shared past to a living memory. He closed his eyes and breathed deeply. Somewhere inside that silence, he could almost hear her whisper again. If you ever feel lost, hold her hand. She'll lead you back to me. And this time, Daniel smiled, not through tears, but through peace. He finally understood. She had never left. She was right there, in the warmth of their home, in the laughter of their child, in the small hands that guided him home. The days that followed felt different, lighter, like the world had quietly forgiven him for being sad for so long. The house no longer echoed with silence. There were small sounds again, Lily's laughter, the clinking of spoons at breakfast, the creak of the old swing in the backyard. Daniel caught himself humming that lullaby sometimes without realizing it. He was learning to live again, slowly, gently, the way sunlight creeps across a cold floor. One Saturday morning, as Daniel packed Lily's lunch for school, she looked up from her cereal with that curious spark in her eyes. Daddy, she said, can we go to the beach soon? The one from the photo. He froze, the spoon halfway to the counter. The photo, the same one she had found in her backpack. It was taken years ago, at that beach just 2 hours away. The last place they'd gone before everything changed. Why the beach, sweetie? He asked softly. Because, Lily said, her tone certain, Mommy's waiting there. He felt a familiar ache rise in his chest. Not painful anymore, just heavy with memory. He smiled faintly. Then I guess we should go find her. They left early the next morning. The sky was pale blue, the air cool, and the world smelled of salt long before the ocean came into view. Lily sat in the back seat, humming to herself, clutching the stuffed bunny she never left behind. Daniel glanced at her through the mirror, smiling at how easily she filled the car with life. The drive felt peaceful, like time had slowed to let them breathe. When they reached the shore, Lily jumped out first, squealing as the wind tangled her hair. The sea stretched endlessly, waves rolling in slow, rhythmic whispers. Daniel stood there for a moment, just watching her, this tiny person, this living piece of love, running barefoot along the sand. It had been her beach. His wife used to call it their place. They'd sit here for hours, tracing shapes in the sand, talking about everything and nothing. He remembered her last words there, quiet and trembling. If anything ever happens, bring her hay. Promise me she'll know this place. He hadn't kept that promise. Not until now. Lily came running back, her hands full of seashells. Look, Daddy, they're shaped like little hearts. He crouched down, smiling. You've got her eye for things. You know that. Whose? Mommy's. Lily's smile softened. I know, she whispered. She told me she likes when we find pretty things together. Daniel blinked back tears and nodded. Yeah, she always did. They walked along the water's edge, Lily skipping in and out of the surf, Daniel keeping pace behind her. The sea breeze played with his hair, salty and cold. Every now and then, Lily would stop to draw something in the sand. A flower, a heart, or 3 stick figures holding hands. This is us, she said proudly. Daniel smiled. It's perfect. As the sun rose higher, they spread out a small picnic blanket. Lily ate her sandwich while watching the waves, her eyes calm and curious. Then, out of nowhere, she said, Daddy, can you write Mommy a letter? He looked at her, surprised. A letter? Yeah, you always tell me to write thank you cards when people do something nice. She held up a seashell, smiling. Mommy did something nice. She sent me to you. Daniel's throat tightened. He didn't trust his voice at first. Then, slowly, he nodded. You're right, sweetheart. He found a small notebook in the car, the kind he used for work, and tore out a page. He sat by the water, pen trembling slightly in his hand, and began to write. Dear love, it's been a long time since I wrote to you. Too long. I kept thinking that forgetting would make it hurt less. But I see now that remembering is what keeps you alive. She's beautiful, you know, so much like you. She hums your songs, sees the world the way you did, full of small wonders. You'd be proud of her, love. You'd be proud of us. We're learning to live again, planting your flowers, watching the sunrise, laughing at things that used to make us cry. And somehow, I think you're here for all of it. If you can hear me, just know, I never stopped loving you. Not for a second. And I never will. Daniel. He folded the letter, holding it against his chest for a moment before tucking it inside a seashell. Lily watched silently, her little hand resting on his arm. What are you gonna do with it? She asked. He smiled faintly. We'll let the sea carry it to her. Together, they walked to the edge of the water. The waves lapped at their feet, cool and foamy. Daniel knelt, holding the shell in his palm. Thank you, he whispered, to her, to life, to love itself. Then he tossed it gently into the tide. The shell floated for a moment before the next wave pulled it under. Gone, but not lost. Lily squeezed his hand. She got it, she said softly. Daniel smiled. Yeah, I think she did. They sat together until the sky turned gold. The world smelled of salt and memory, and Daniel realized something. He didn't feel broken anymore. The pain hadn't vanished, but it had softened into something bearable, almost beautiful. As they watched the sunset, Lily rested her head against his arm. Daddy. Yeah, baby. Can we come here every year? He looked at her, eyes shining. Every year, he promised. She smiled sleepily. Good. 'Cause Mommy likes this place. He kissed the top of her head, whispering, so do I. On the drive home, Lily fell asleep in the back seat, clutching her bunny, the evening sun painting her face in orange and pink. Daniel kept glancing at her through the mirror, a faint smile never leaving his face. He realized something quiet but powerful, that sometimes the people we lose don't leave us empty. They leave us with love big enough to last the rest of our lives. As the first stars appeared above the highway, Daniel whispered softly to the wind, "Thank you for reminding me how to live." And somewhere beyond the waves, beyond the horizon, the sea carried his words away, toward her. Spring melted quietly into summer. The garden they had planted bloomed wildly now. White daisies, soft lavender, tiny bursts of color dancing beneath a maple tree. Daniel had started every morning sitting there, tea in hand, watching the flowers sway in the wind. It became his ritual, not of grief, but of gratitude. Every petal, every scent, felt like her. Every laugh from Lily was another heartbeat of the woman he once thought he'd lost. The world hadn't gone back to what it was. It had simply become something new. Gentler, softer, alive again. One Sunday, Daniel and Lily walked hand in hand down the path that led to the community center. It was the first time in years he'd volunteered for anything. There was a small gathering for single parents, a support group. When he first heard about it, he almost didn't go. He'd told himself he was fine now. But deep down, he knew healing isn't something you finish. It's something you live with. Lily skipped beside him, her little backpack bouncing with each step. "Do I get to play with other kids, Daddy?" "Yeah," Daniel smiled. "And I get to talk to some grown-ups for a bit." "Are they sad too?" she asked softly. He hesitated, looking down at her. "Some of them might be. But maybe we can make them smile again." Lily grinned. "Like Mommy would do." He squeezed her hand. Exactly like that. The hall was small and warm. Sunlight spilled through tall windows, catching dust in the air. Chairs circled the room. People sat quietly, men and women with tired faces and hopeful eyes. Some clutched photos, others just fidgeted with nervous hands. Daniel took a seat. He could feel his heart beating fast, but Lily squeezed his fingers reassuringly before running off toward the children's corner. The meeting began with soft introductions, stories of loss, survival, guilt, love. When it came to Daniel, he hesitated, his voice catching for a moment. Then he began. "At first, I thought moving forward meant forgetting," he said quietly. "I thought if I didn't talk about her, I'd hurt less. But all I did was build walls between myself and the one person who needed me most, my daughter." He paused, eyes flickering toward Lily across the room, coloring with another little girl. "She's the reason I'm here, the reason I kept going. She reminded me that love doesn't end when someone's gone. It just finds new ways to stay." The room was silent. Some nodded. Others wiped their eyes. He continued, voice softer now. "I don't think grief ever really leaves us. But maybe it's not supposed to. Maybe it becomes something else, something we can share, to help someone else feel a little less alone." A woman across from him whispered, "That's beautiful." He smiled faintly. "It's what she taught me." After the meeting, a few people came to talk. They asked about his story, about Lily, about the garden he mentioned. One older man said quietly, "You gave me hope again." Daniel felt something warm inside him. Not pride, not relief, just peace. When they finally stepped outside, Lily was waiting near the steps, her arms full of wildflowers she'd picked from a nearby patch. "Daddy, can we take these to Mommy's garden?" she asked, eyes bright. He crouched down, nodding. "That's a perfect idea." She smiled, tucking one flower behind his ear, giggling. "Now you look happy." He laughed softly. "You make it easy." That evening, they walked back home as the sky began to blush with sunset. When they reached the garden, Lily carefully placed each flower into the soil, humming softly. Daniel watched her, the way her hair glowed in the fading light, how her little hands worked carefully, tenderly. "Mommy's garden looks even prettier now," she said proudly. Daniel nodded, his voice low. "She'd love it." Lily looked up at him. Do you think she can see it? He smiled gently. I think she can see everything. For a moment, they stood in silence, the kind that doesn't feel empty. The air smelled of earth and lavender, the sky melting from gold to purple. Then Lily whispered, Daddy, I think Mommy's happy now. Daniel blinked, feeling tears form again, not from sorrow, but from something lighter. Yeah, he said, his voice trembling. Me too. That night, after Lily went to bed, Daniel sat on the porch with a soft hum of crickets filling the dark. He opened the small notebook again, the one he'd used to write the letter at the beach. There were still a few blank pages left. He wrote slowly, not to her this time, but to himself. You did it. You kept your promise. You lived. He closed the notebook, exhaling deeply. Then he looked up at the sky. The stars were faint, but steady, like distant candles that refused to go out. He thought about all the people still lost in their grief, the ones sitting in quiet homes with photos on tables and words left unsaid. And he made another quiet promise, that he'd help them find their light too. The next weekend, Daniel and Lily hung a small wooden sign near the garden fence. It read, The Garden of Her Light. Neighbors stopped by to see it. Some left flowers, others left handwritten notes. It became a little sanctuary for the whole block, a place where people came to remember, to breathe, to hope. Sometimes Daniel would catch strangers kneeling there, whispering names he didn't know, or children chasing butterflies between the flowers. Every time, it made him smile, because that's what she would have wanted, for love to keep growing, even in the hands of others. One evening, as he tucked Lily into bed, she asked, Daddy, when I grow up, can I still talk to Mommy? Daniel brushed her hair back gently. Of course you can. She'll always listen. She smiled sleepily. Then I'll tell her you smiled today. He laughed quietly, kissing her forehead. You do that. As she drifted off, the house filled with that same soft stillness, not empty, but peaceful. Daniel stood at the doorway, looking around at the home they had rebuilt from pieces of the past. Everything had changed, and somehow, everything was okay. He walked to the window, looking out at the garden under the moonlight, the flowers swaying, alive, eternal. He whispered, Thank you for giving me two hearts to love with. And in that moment, it felt like the night itself exhaled, as if somewhere, someone was smiling back.